What's going on, everybody? It's Instructor Hudson with Open Arms ENT. In 2025, there were at least 232 accidental shootings involving children ages 17 and under. 92 of those shootings ended in fatalities. 147 suffered injuries. All of those shootings could have been prevented if someone followed gun safety rules. So whether you carry a firearm in the home or for personal protection, there are gun safety rules that you must follow. So today, we're going to be talking about them. First and foremost, always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. But more importantly than the direction, the muzzle of your gun should never face anyone you're about to shoot. For this demonstration today, I'm going to be using my Springfield Hellcat Pro. It is currently unloaded. So as far as the direction is concerned, you want the muzzle pointed down. But under any circumstance, do your muzzle point at anyone you're not about to shoot. So many times I see uneducated people handling firearms and they're just swinging the barrel all over the place, disregarding the direction that it's pointing in. They use terms like, oh, nothing's in the chamber, or it's on safety. Regardless of that, you always treat firearms like they're loaded. So regardless if it's loaded or unloaded, safety or no safety, you never point a gun at anyone you're not about to shoot. As far as the direction being pointed down, that could change. Let's say if someone is laying on the floor, someone is sleeping on the ground, a toddler or anything, then down is no longer a safe direction. So just remember, never point the barrel at anything you do not intend to shoot. Next, always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. So many times I see people holding firearms with their finger on the trigger. The trigger is not a resting spot for your finger. Your finger should be on the frame of the gun. Most guns that have a little slit, a little spot right there that your index trigger finger can rest on. But so many people, again, they touch that trigger and they're swinging the muzzle all over the place. That's an accident waiting to happen. So many people pull their firearm from their holster with their finger on the trigger and they take the risk of shooting themselves. When is it appropriate to touch the trigger? When you are getting ready to shoot the gun. So while you're loading your gun, that finger's off the trigger. When you racking that gun, put one in the chamber, fingers off the trigger. Once you get your hand placement set, you extend your arms out and you lock in on the target. And once you decided you're ready to shoot, at that moment, you touch that trigger. Then once you take all your rounds and you fire as many as it takes, the first thing you do before you lower that firearm is remove your finger from the trigger. So under no circumstance do you want to go up or down with your finger on the trigger of the gun. Once you lock in on a target and you decide to shoot, whether it be two hands, one hand, however it may be, whether you're training, you're practicing, or it's a real life situation, you keep your finger off that trigger until you locked in on the target and you're ready to shoot that firearm. I had a young lady reach out to me about a CPL class. She sent me a picture of her leg. She informed me that she accidentally shot herself. On the picture, you can clearly see 4 entry and exit wounds where the bullet went in and out off one round fired. She is lucky she did not hit an artery. She could have bled out and died. So again, under no circumstance do you pull your firearm out of your holster with your finger on the trigger. That was the reason that the firearm went off and she accidentally shot herself. Think of the trigger like the brake on a car. You don't touch the brake until you're ready to stop. You do not touch the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Next, keep the gun unloaded until ready to use. Well, when are you ready to use it? When you're carrying, it should be loaded. But you never leave a loaded gun unattended. No one should ever find your gun loaded and you're nowhere around. That's a recipe for disaster. It could be a minor or it could be someone who does not need access to your firearm. In most states, if a minor gained access to your gun and they hurt themselves or somebody else, the owner of that firearm is going to be held responsible. Under no circumstance should a child find your gun in the home, in the vehicle, unattended and loaded. They shouldn't find the gun at all, period. And I do not like leaving guns in the car unattended. So many people get their guns stolen inside of a vehicle while they're in a restaurant, at a concert, and they leave a loaded gun in the car unattended. If you must leave a firearm in a car unattended, then you need to park that vehicle in a parking structure or somewhere where they have cameras and you can pay for parking and you can hold someone accountable if your car gets broken into or stolen. Next, knowing your target and what's beyond. With that being said, you need to train. You need to practice with your firearm. Because in a real life situation, I may be on the defense. I'm the good guy. So if someone chooses me as a target and I need to pull my firearm quickly and put rounds on that target, I need to know that target and what's beyond. So with that being said, I need to know my line of sight. I need to be aware of my front and rear sights, how to quickly pull that firearm, lock in on a target, and engage. I may suffer from tunnel vision, so I may not be focused on my surroundings. I'm focused on where the shots are coming from, where the target is at. So if I'm locked in on my target and I'm locked in on my sights, I know my dominant eye, I'm going to put the rounds where they need to be. You want to make sure that you have the proper ammunition, because you don't want to have the rounds that go straight through. You don't want nothing to over penetrate your target and hit someone that had nothing to do with it. That does happen. There have been cases where bullets went through the intended target and end up going through them and hitting someone that had nothing to do with it. So you want to make sure you have self-defense rounds in your firearm. So knowing your target and what's beyond comes with training. It comes with training with your firearm, knowing your line of sights, knowing your ammunition, knowing your target and what's beyond. Also a part of gun safety is knowing how to properly load and unload your firearm. So again, I got my Springfield Armory Hellcat Pro unloaded, and I'm going to be using some snap caps. Snap caps are fake rounds. They don't actually shoot or discharge from the firearm. They're for the purpose of training. And they use snap caps on all levels, civilian, law enforcement, military. So snap caps don't actually discharge. So if I rack a snap cap, pull the trigger, nothing happens. So let's say if I got one in the chamber and I got a full magazine and I want to unload my firearm. I have seen people rack it and unload it the wrong way. They'll pull one out the chamber, then they'll take the magazine out and they'll assume that it's empty. But when I racked the one out the head, I still had the magazine in it. Therefore, as one went out, another one popped in. So that's the wrong way to unload your firearm. So when the magazine, one is in the chamber, if you want to unload that firearm the correct way, the first thing you do is remove the magazine. Once you take that magazine out, then you open a slide and you get the one out the chamber. Check it a couple times. Always give it a visual inspection. Never assume that it's unloaded. You always check it just to confirm. Even if you see it racks out, just get in the habit of racking it a couple times just to make sure it's unloaded. Also, all semi-automatic pistols don't have thumb safeties. Some do, some don't. A lot of manufacturers have made two versions, one with a thumb safety and one without. So it'll be up to the purchaser to decide if they want a thumb safety or not. I don't do thumb safeties because I am the safety. I'm going to make sure that gun doesn't accidentally go off or get into the wrong hands. A lot of shootings happen close. So I don't know if I'm going to have time to draw this firearm and flip my thumb safety or rack a round and then put rounds on the target when someone has already chosen me as their target. So with that being said, I have to follow my gun safety rules and I have to train efficiently in order to be able to draw this firearm safely and put rounds on that target. Also, shoving a firearm into your pants, in your pocket, without a holster, to me, is dangerous. You always want your trigger to be covered up. So by me just taking a loaded pistol, whether it's on safety or not, especially if you got a firearm without a thumb safety, and you got one in the chamber, and just shoving that gun into your pants, you now make it to where your trigger can touch anything and accidentally go off. Your trigger is exposed. You want your trigger to not be exposed. So you want to put it inside of a holster when you tuck that gun into your pants. Wherever you keep it at, whether you got the appendix carry or you keep it on the side, you want that gun inside of a holster. Also, I can move, I can fight if I had to, I can do whatever I need to do with the firearm in the holster and it stays in that spot. I heard a story of a man that was getting robbed who had a firearm on him. As he went to draw his firearm, it discharged and he shot himself in the thigh. Then he fell to the ground. So not only was the bad guy able to get whatever possessions he had in his pocket, he was also able to take possession of his firearm. You also must know how to use your holster correctly and effectively and have it in the right spot. So there was a man who was in his car in a drive-thru waiting on food. And as he was sitting in his car, he saw some individuals that was coming toward his direction that looked kind of shady, and it was nighttime. So what he did was take his firearm out of the holster and set it on a passenger seat. He was alone. The guys went through, they didn't pay him no attention. So as he grabbed his firearm to reholster, the firearm went off. He said it got tangled up into the seatbelt and then it discharged and went off, shooting himself in the leg. So he had to get out of the drive-thru and then drive himself to the emergency and call his wife. Me personally, I would have took the whole holster out and set it on my passenger seat. Therefore, my trigger is still covered up. The holster covers up your trigger. It protects the firearm from accidentally going off. So if he kept the firearm inside of the holster, he'd been able to then holster that firearm back into his pants safely versus taking a whole pistol out and then trying to shove it into his holster in a sitting position in his vehicle. A firearm is a tool. It is not a toy. It is not a prop. So you got to know how to properly operate that tool. It happens to be a deadly tool. It is a tool that was created and designed to kill. So if you do not know how to properly operate that tool, you can hurt yourself or someone else. So there we have it. Those are the universal gun safety rules and some pointers and tips that I recommend for anyone who is carrying a firearm, storing a firearm in a home, or even thinking about getting into firearms. This is Instructor Hudson with Open Arms ENT. Hope you all have a great day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.